All right, I'm going to make a little video. I wanted to reply to Unworship Deity, who was asking me about spirit science or about a video, my thoughts on a video, which I appreciate, by the way, thanks, that he made about people that do videos debunking spirit science. If you don't know what that is, you can look it up. It's kind of a, as those things go, popular, new agey kind of, water is alive and plumbing is brutalizing water and things like this, with a lot of new age or I don't know, post new age language. I mean, my grandmothers were new age. This is more post new age, mixing in the language often of quantum mechanics and stuff. It is annoying, but so he was asking about that, and I happen to have an opinion on that. Uh, And meditation, Anakanavad made a video on what is the value of meditation. I was watching and I was thinking, well, that's like, what's the value of relaxation or something? But then he went on and he said that. He was talking about besides that, besides the obvious fact that it helps you focus and stuff. I mean, if you start meditating, um, it could be excruciating. This is something I'm dealing with right now, that it's kind of hard to meditate because your mind is so fluttering, it's hard to sit down. But that's the purpose, really, is if you sit down at the very beginning, your mind just has all kinds of things. And if you wait and let them go, stop adding to them, and you might be left with a little cloud that won't go away that you can then look at. And as you meditate and try to subtract them, you will calm your mind, and that's one of the values of it, the results of that. But he was talking he said, but what is the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, the ultimate? Does it answer for everything? And see, it's like, I'd say one thing I learned from meditating is that there isn't that. That's not even a worthwhile thing to go for. That it's like an answer that everybody needs or wants, even meditation. Now, meditation is about as useful in general as exercise. Okay, but everybody needs a different amount of exercise, and some metabolisms just are naturally burning all the time and sort of exercising all the time. And it's definitely possible to live, in most people that don't meditate uh, and that are, happy, let's say, they're just having a natural mental metabolism where, they don't need to meditate to stay mentally in shape. But basically, a meditation, and I use that term in the broadest possible sense. I don't think any one method of meditation is the ultimate. Um, Basically, if you relax and dwell on your internal thoughts in a relaxing way until the chaos dies down, well, there's various ways to do that, and to me, that's meditation. And I think this is a useful thing. And so, segueing into spirit science, I haven't seen a lot of people debugging spirit science, though I did a search and I saw there were such people. But I do subscribe to this guy. I think his name is Martimer, and he has done it several times. And as far as the stuff you brought up on worship deity, about what's the motivation and why bother? Why not just leave these guys alone? And what is the obsession? And is it some residual of religion that provokes this reaction, or why is it even necessary and whatnot? Well, I mean, it just brings me back to something I noticed within the first year, like 9 years ago now, or whatever, 8 years ago, with the YouTube atheist community such as it was. And the reason I recognize this is because it's even a more general pattern on the internet. People, have different reasons to come and want to talk to the camera. There's some reasons we probably all share in common, but there's also different formula, a spectrum, a formula that you see. I've tried to invent my own formula to a certain degree. I'm sure I'm rehashing, you know, things I've seen in some sense. But one recipe is you go and find someone you think is a moron, sort of an easy target. In other words, um, you find a village idiot, if you can, somebody foolish enough to take a position that regardless of any postmodern angst or doubt that we all have, our cynicism, that you can go, yeah, but the Earth's not 4,000 years old, or yeah, but water's not alive. And part of the purpose is to get on your high horse. You're looking for an excuse. So if that's the case, and somebody finds a fool in the village, uh, it doesn't change the fact that the purpose was to get them on the high horse. And eventually, these people will go out and target, you know, inappropriate targets because of possibly a desperation to find someone that fits the role. So they'll shove a, you know, square peg in a round hole, a round peg in a square hole, whatever. And I think this is a little bit of what's happening with spirit science. Now, I think it's perfectly legitimate to go out and look for things to critique. Um, and I think there's a distinction between various ways of approaching that. Um, uh, in terms of the criticisms of spirit science, uh, I'm glad somebody's doing it, but I don't think it's worth much energy. I think there's a benefit to having things like spirit science where we remain open to uh, meaningful interpretations of nature. And this is the problem, is that a lot of people's scientific understanding, they don't understand necessarily a lot of science, but they have this idea, a vibe about scientific understanding that they want to adopt themselves, which is sort of inherently meaningless. Like their view of it asserts that things don't actually have a real meaning. And so so for example, uh, the laws of quantum mechanics have no meaning per se, and any ramifications they have are ramifications, and those aren't meaningless. But of course, ramifications and results and things that happen in our experience are meaningful to human beings. We need that. We create meaning, surely, but there's also actual information in the universe from which we are extracting personal meaning, right? It's like the evidence in nature is information, and then it tells us how that thing relates to us. And so then, if we're a part of the situation, it's legit that that there's a personal aspect to all meaning for an individual, because the personal meaning for me is different from the personal meaning for you, and it all actually makes sense because you're different from me, and so on. So that we would want to find meaning in the ramifications or the situation that we're in terms of the laws of physics. This is important to keep alive, and I think it's impossible to stop it, but still. So there's an issue with things like spirit science, which are so full of bullshit that they're stretching so much that at best they sort of brutalize the real meanings that I think we could find in the way nature works. So it's just slightly better than what we're facing in the broad spectrum, which is this idea that everything's meaningless. So it's better that somebody just randomly be reaching in the dark for meaning. Like they hear a term they like from quantum mechanics and use that for their meaning. That is slightly better than rejecting the concept of meaning. On the other hand, it would be terrible if something like spirit science became a dominant view, because it's just so arbitrarily whatever you want and pick and choose. Probably a reason that it couldn't become that. Like you say, it's hard to imagine these people trying to take over the world. But I guarantee or blow up the world, if it became a mainstream thing that people adopted because they were conformists, then all the sins and evil temptations that conformism brings to organizations would happen, and it would be pretty bad. So because it's just so arbitrary, and it just picks this emotion that, like, it's scientifically legitimate, just to prop itself up. It too is getting on its high horse by choosing a target that helps it feel legitimate. So it needs to be criticized and kept down. But I would agree with you that the people spending very much time doing that, they're just simply continuing to reveal the fact that people that grow up without a dogmatic religion, which does happen, happened to me, and it's happening more and more often. They don't face as many sour grapes about the whole issue. They don't need to get on a high horse and ride around looking for a village idiot to beat. And the same topics are still on the table and discussed, but they could be discussed at a higher level, and that's not what we're seeing. Um, but then again, I'm going to make the ultimate cop out of it's like sort of where we are in history versus where we need to go. It's fitting right now that you have this kind of a grudge-filled reaction to Christianity by former Christians and so on. The Aaron Ross, people that went to their Bible study or were going to become priests or were priests or whatever, or even just lived in a community where it was dominant enough that they have sort of a energy source, grudge-fueled energy source, even if it's not a bitter grudge, that it seems like it matters a little bit more than it really matters to them because of their experiences with it. And that's where we are in history. On the other hand, it's tedious to me because, I've followed a conversation that's a philosophical conversation over the last many centuries, and then skipping a while, thousands of years. And in that conversation, theistic ideas, the obviously theistic ideas haven't been taken seriously for over 100 years, at least, maybe 200. And so, depending on how you count there, where you make the separation, and it's kind of uh, it's like why. I mean, it took us thousands of years to get past that subject, so there's really no reason to go back now that we're a couple centuries past that really actually being very important. So, I would prefer if people did discuss these issues, it was with that in mind. But I don't think we'll get to that point until this attitude about what it means to be a scientific and rational, until that includes meaning, the importance of myth to psychologies and this sort of thing, until we reinsert the meaning as humans experience it into our understanding of the universe, which I think we can do by realizing the universe is actually full of information. So there's no inherent meaning of the old classical kind, but there is built-in meaning that tells you what's happened to get to the point that you're at once you measure the state of something. So, and I think that can reinvent meaning. And until then, we're in this weird void, this Middle Ages. We're in a kind of a Middle Ages now, where the thoughts of the future are available to us. The thoughts of the ancient times not only persist, but arguably still dominate. But they don't feel like they're dominating. They feel like these future ideas are coming, but really the future ideas have not been freed. And a lot of the people that are looking towards the future are still using the old ideas to root their own life and just talk the rhetoric of the future. So we're in an awkward time, and I think probably a lot of this petty squabbling has to happen. And I think really you, me, and whatnot doing a meta conversation about it's about the best we can hope as far as like when's it going to stop naturally. It's not one of those things that I think it has to burn itself out as opposed to being stopped. It needs to burn itself out. So anyway, thanks for the question. Talk to you guys later and so on.